Combat pressure testing on YouTube is mostly warrior cosplay with mouth guards. Real pressure testing for reality-based self-defense shatters egos and sometimes even bones. Let's check it out. Today, I'm going to teach you what real pressure testing is, why most so-called pressure tests are a joke, and why reality-based combat has nothing to do with safe, sanitized drills. This video is going to show you CFA's definition of pressure testing, give real-world examples, and why hobbyists confuse warrior cosplay with real-world survival. Every once in a while, a small YouTube channel will use my name to get attention and clicks. Usually, I don't waste a second on it, but this time I will, because this individual put out videos with my name in the title, spliced in clips of my work, and even tried to challenge my credibility.
And this is a formal challenge to Sammy Franco and to you guys to challenge Sammy to show us his pressure testing video, his pressure testing his system, in a dynamic situation.
This is a counter video responding to circulating clips that use my footage. I'll show brief excerpts for critique and analysis, not promotion. While I find it humorous that I've triggered him to such a degree, it also highlights a common delusion. People think their sparring skits are pressure testing, and that ignorance deserves a swift correction. So I'll use his clips under fair use to show you why his so-called pressure testing is nowhere near real-world combat training. In fact, he handed me a gift, a perfect case study in delusion versus reality. First, let's make something perfectly clear. Pressure testing is not sparring. It is not play fighting. It is not two guys performing safe drill sequences for the camera. RBSD pressure testing is a real litmus test that exposes whether a technique will survive or collapse. In CFA, pressure testing has 4 critical requirements. The first is intent. The attacker must have a shift in mentality and truly want to hurt you, not just act it out. Second, it must have extreme kinetic energy. The attack has to be delivered with violent force, not pulled halfway. Third, the attacker has to be fully committed and non-compliant, meaning they give you nothing, they aren't cooperating, and they won't let you win. And fourth and final, it has to trigger a noticeable spike of adrenaline and fear that changes how your body moves, thinks, and reacts. Without those 4 elements, it is not pressure testing. It's a cosplay routine for weekend warriors pretending to be Rambo. When I taught officers survival for law enforcement and other professionals, their standard was simple. Techniques had to be pressure tested before they could ever be codified into policy. I've experienced it firsthand during the program development phase. Officers took real hits, and serious injuries happened during legitimate, high-stress pressure testing. 99% of martial artists, even experienced ones, think their light drills and controlled sparring sessions somehow qualify. They don't. They're safe, they're predictable, and they lack the fear, adrenaline, intent, and resistance that make pressure testing dangerous in the first place. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of them want it that way, because if they actually trained under the kind of pressure that I'm talking about, they'd break down physically, mentally, and emotionally. Guys, listen to me. Real pressure testing is not a game. It's dangerous. And here's another truth that nobody in the martial arts business wants to admit. Real pressure testing is a revenue killer. Students don't line up to get battered, injured, and terrified. They want safe drills, a good sweat, and maybe a belt promotion. And most martial arts schools know if they tried it, students would quit. Insurance would skyrocket. Injuries would pile up and lawsuits would ensue. That's why the vast majority don't touch it, because they can't afford to. But that's why most systems never actually prepare you for violence. They avoid the very thing that separates reality from fantasy. Because of that risk, most schools that want to claim they're doing pressure testing offer a watered-down version instead, a cosmetic series of drills that isn't remotely close to real pressure testing or real-world violence. It placates students and protects the business, but it leaves you with a dangerous false sense of security. When I conducted pressure testing sessions in CFA, like ground pounding and simulated street fighting, students would frequently tell me the anxiety started before they even got to my studio. Some said they'd feel it in the car ride heading over. Some flat out refused to do it, and others just quit. That's how serious this type of training is. Talk is cheap. I'm going to show you some of the intense training drills we run in contemporary fighting arts. Drills that carry real elements of pressure testing, but are not the full crucible of pressure testing I used during the development. Even as demonstrations, you're going to see intent behind the attacks, full kinetic energy, and opponents who refuse to cooperate. You'll see the chaos, the adrenaline spikes, and the resistance that forces techniques to either survive or collapse. While these clips are controlled for safety, they're still dramatically closer to the real violence than the cosplay pressure testing you see online. And now, back to this guy who thinks this is pressure testing. What you'll see is the complete opposite. No intent, no violent force, no adrenaline spikes, no fear, no real resistance. Frankly, I've seen more aggression in a pickup game of basketball. What you see here is safe, it's cooperative sparring routine dressed up to look like something it isn't. That's not pressure testing. That's choreography for the camera. Pressure testing isn't something you trot out on YouTube every week like a circus act. And for the people who demand that I pressure test every single CFA technique live on YouTube, you're out of your mind. And it tells me one thing. These people don't have the slightest understanding of what true pressure testing is about. Because if they did, they would know that it's insane and unsustainable. Even if I did provide it, they would never be satisfied. They would demand another test, another technique, another angle, another attacker, another weapon, and another scenario. So let me make this perfectly clear. Sammy Franco TV isn't a horse and pony show. I run a high-level reality-based combat channel for people who actually want to learn how to survive, not for those who want a weekly stunt. Hey, we're about to get back into the video, but let me ask you something. Do you want to legitimately accelerate your self-defense skills? And are you sick of clickbait videos teaching absolute garbage? Or tired of being misled by unqualified wannabe experts who have zero credibility or experience? If the answer is yes, now is the time to join my War Machine memberships. As a member, you're going to get exclusive access to in-depth training videos, exclusive full-feature video content, downloadable training PDFs, and direct insights you're not going to find anywhere else. Plus, you're going to have direct access to me in the comments section of all my videos. So if you have questions, you're going to get real, detailed answers from me and not some random keyboard warrior. So if you're serious about mastering real-world combat skills, hit the join button below and start training like a true war machine. Now, let's get back to the lesson. So if you don't take my word for it, take it from Tommy's. This is a law enforcement veteran with 28 years of experience, and he's going to tell you what his perspective has been with real pressure testing, not the stuff you see, the little sparring skits you see on YouTube. This is what real pressure testing is from a law enforcement perspective. Tommy, why don't you tell them a little bit about it?
I was in the DEA Academy in the mid-90s in Quantico, Virginia. And what we would see is scenarios where there would be full volatile chaos to mimic a real situation that you may encounter on the street.
Now, were there a lot of injuries as a result of that?
Numerous injuries. People were constantly banged up.
What kind of, were anything serious?
There were broken ribs, there were separated shoulders, broken arms. Different things happened to different people because the scenarios were so volatile and chaotic. People just inherently would go harder at each other, which ended up in injury constantly.
So the stuff you see on YouTube, for example, some of these people who want to think that they're doing pressure testing, what's your perspective from, because you've been there, done that just like me, what's your perspective of that?
That's not pressure testing.
I agree.
That's not pressure testing at all. I mean, and they're doing it so nobody gets hurt. If you're doing it so nobody gets hurt, it's not pressure testing.
You're not doing it.
Yeah.
That's the whole point, and that's the paradox of it. So, so my question to you is, what about if you and I decided to engage in pressure testing in our videos for like a YouTube audience? Do you think that's sustainable, even though we have pressure tested CFA for decades? So I'm asking you, Tommy, based on your experience, based on your training, how sustainable is that?
It's not sustainable.
From the ancient Colosseum, where gladiators lived and died, to the storm-torn seas, where iron met flesh upon shattered decks, to the battlefield, where wrath carved kingdoms in blood, bone, and steel, we follow the War Machine. War Machine Chronicles celebrates the warrior archetype, the ethos society seeks to suppress, to soften, to erase. From the age of iron and blood, where warriors roared defiance in the face of death, to all men who still feel the war drum beat beneath their skin, written for fighters, soldiers, and survivors. For those who still walk the edge, it is transformation, forged to harden the mind, discipline the body, and sharpen the will. War Machine Chronicles, not just a book, it's a sacred codex of wrath. Over 300 pages, more than 100 haunting illustrations, combat verse, and lethal philosophy forged by Sammy Franco. War Machine Chronicles, not just a story, but a weapon. It teaches, it tests, it transforms. War Machine Chronicles, coming soon. Available in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle editions.
I've been doing reality-based self-defense training for over 35 years, and pressure testing has been an integral part of developing my CFA system. Along the way, students and I were injured. That's the necessary part of building a credible combat system. and I wear those scars as a badge of honor. But if people expect me to put people through that crucible all over again just to appease online skeptics with no experience, no credentials, you're out of your mind. And for the record, the ultimate form of pressure testing does not happen in the dojo or a gym. It happens in the field, in the real world. Those are the true laboratories of combat. Law enforcement and military professionals pressure test techniques every single day, not in theory, but in real life, where hesitation and error carry real consequences. And that's precisely why they seek contemporary fighting arts for training, because CFA has been tested under those conditions. As I've said in many of my Warrior Walk videos, I've lived through many violent encounters across my life and career. That real-world experience matters. It's what separates CFA from 99% of the martial arts out there. Most teachers have never had to pressure test fighting methods in real-world conditions. I have. Now you've seen the difference, what CFA calls real pressure testing and what the hobbyist thinks it means. The difference is night and day. One keeps you alive, the other gives you a false sense of security that never relates to the real world. When it comes to surviving in the streets, stick to reality, not cosplay. Learn from real experts who've done the work for decades. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys at the next video.